الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم وأقيموا الصلاة وآتوا الزكاة واركعوا مع الراكعين صدق الله العظيم. As we all know that Zakat is one of the 5 pillars of Islam. It is one of the pillars upon which our religion is based. And it is that one worship that if it is done correctly, then there would be no poverty in the world. As I think probably Moulana Khalid Sahab put on the Quwwat Islam Twitter account when he was explaining to us giving in the month of Ramadan to the madrasas, and that the 2.5% that we may give in our zakat is equivalent to someone's 100% of their yearly income in India. To cover, we will come back to the previous slides if time allows. That what are social benefits of giving zakat? How does our community benefit? How do communities benefit if zakat is given? It does not just stay to 1%. Rather, the wealth is distributed to the poor people as well. Number 2, they have then food to put on their table, etc. Number 3, a reduction in crime. Why? Because the majority of crime that will go and steal, if the money is redistributed in the correct way, then crime will be reduced. And finally, the economy, the individual does not have a fridge, so he will go or she will go to the local electronic shop and buy a fridge. That will benefit him or her and her to the person who's bought the fridge from them. So these are some benefits of giving zakah. Moving on, it is the mercy of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. If we look at the 4 pillars that are mentioned here, salah, for example, is a worship that we all do with our bodies and only our bodies. It's a bodily. A person stops himself from doing something. Whereas when a person is praying salah, he is doing something. When a person is fasting, he is abstaining. He is stopping himself from Allah through that. And Hajj is a mixture of all 3. It's a bodily worship. We do tawaf, we pelt the shaitan, we do wuquf in Arafah. He has to stop himself from cutting his hair. He has to stop himself from applying perfume. He has to stop himself from wearing stitched clothing, etc., etc. And it's obviously a monetary worship that a person spends of the Haramain for all of us again, and may he allow us to go again and again to visit him. What does the word zakah mean? So zakah in the dictionary means, it has 2 meanings. Number 1, increase. In the Arabic dictionary, it has 2 meanings. Number 1, increase, and number 2, purification. How does that link with zakat? The action that we do. So increase. When we give our zakat, our wealth is increased through the barakah and blessing that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala puts inside it. Little money gives us more value. Purification, it purifies our hearts from greed, and it purifies our wealth from any haram that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the Quran, خُذْ مِنْ أَمْوَالِهِمْ صَدَقَةً تُطَهِّرُهُمْ وَتُزَكِّيهِمْ بِهَا وَصَلِّ عَلَيْهِمْ. That take from their wealth charity which will purify them and clean them. So this is the meaning of the word zakat. in an Islamic sense, in the Sharia, Zakat is the 2.5% that an eligible Muslim will give out of his wealth every lunar year. Okay, that is what we're going to look in detail now. As who must give Zakat? An individual giving Zakat, he has to be, number one, a Muslim. A non-Muslim will not give Zakat. Number two, he has to be sane. He has to be mentally capable. Number three, according to the Hanafi madhab, and that is what we will be discussing today, he has to be an adult. These three are self-explanatory. We can all understand them. The fourth one is his wealth must be equivalent or more than the threshold nisab. How does a person ascertain and how does he work out whether zakah is farad on him or not? There are three main steps that he has to go through, and that is what each and every one of us needs to do. Number one is he needs to calculate his zakatable assets. After doing that, he needs to deduct debts and bills. He needs to calculate his assets, deduct the deductibles, and then check whether the final amount is equivalent to the nisab or not. So we will look at each three in detail now. That the first step is to calculate assets. So what are zakatable assets? In very simple terms. Number one is gold and silver. This is the asal currency, the real currency, gold and silver. The gold and silver, remember, has to be 50% or more. 12 karat gold or more. If you have gold or silver, you will work out the value and you will add it to your zakatable assets. Number two, cash. Cash in your bank account. Cash in your wallet. Cash in your bedroom, wherever, under your floorboards, whatever you may have. All cash, including foreign currency. We may go on holiday to Dubai or Turkey, or we may go for Hajj or Umrah, and we come back with excess riyals or whatever the liras or whatever currency that we come back with. Those also need to be added to your zakatable assets. You may have 100, 200 riyal lying around at home. That needs to be added to your zakatable assets. Cash includes money which is owed to you. You have given your brother 100 pounds, and your brother acknowledges, the key point here, he acknowledges that you have given him 100 pounds, and he is promising to repay you that 100 pounds. Then that 100 pounds will be added to your zakatable assets. If you have borrowed someone money, you borrowed someone 500 pounds, but they turn around and say to you, no, they do not acknowledge the debt, and they have no intention of paying the debt, then that 500 pounds will not be added to your zakatable assets. The individual you have given the money to, he has to acknowledge and agree to repay it. Along with that, in today's current climate, Bitcoin, cryptocurrency, etc., all of that is included in cash. It will be added, the value of it, to your zakatable assets. Business assets. A business asset is something not just a businessman will deal with. A business asset is something that me or you have bought with the intention of selling, with the intention from the outset of selling. For example, I have a Quran here. I buy this Quran with the intention of reselling it. The value that I will be happy to sell this Quran at will be added to my zakatable assets. For example, I bought this Quran for £1. I am willing to sell it. My selling price is £2. The £2 will be added to my zakatable assets. This is before you have sold it. A shopkeeper, a sweet shop, for example, he will value his sweets at the amount he is going to sell them at. For example, he has a sweet or a packet of sweets or a box of sweets worth £5. He is going to sell them for £6. £6 will be added to his zakatable asset. It's the selling price, not the buying price, but the price that you will be happy to sell it at. That will be added to your zakatable assets. The last one doesn't apply today to us anyway, but in India it applies. Livestock, sheep, camels, cows, zakat is given on them. Along with that, agricultural produce, if a person is a farmer, he will give zakat, but again, that is not really applicable for us today. So that is someone's zakatable assets, what he will add to his zakat when he is calculating his zakat. Non-zakatable assets. Personal belongings. If a person has 10 cars, okay, he's got 10 cars, Allah has blessed him. He has no intention of selling those cars. He uses them for personal use. He will not add the value of those cars to his zakatable assets. Okay? A person has 5 houses. He stays in them 1 day a week. Will he add them to his zakatable assets? Yes or no? Who thinks he will? Who thinks he won't? Put your hand up. Will he add the 10 houses or the 5 houses that he has no intention of selling to his zakatable assets? No. No, he will not. Business items. What does that mean? A businessman. Obviously, his stock, etc., he will add to his zakatable assets. But the shelves in his shop or the till, he will not add that to his zakatable assets. The fixed furnitures he has inside his shop will not be added to his zakatable assets. Jewelry which is not gold or silver. Jewelry which is not gold or silver, plastic, etc., that will not be added to a person's zakatable assets. Haram wealth. A person has a savings account that gives him 2% interest every year. So for example, he earns interest of £2,000 from his account every year. That £2,000 will not be added to his zakatable assets. He has to get rid of that £2,000, ideally, number one, by returning it to where it came from. That may not be possible. If it is not possible, he needs to give it to a charitable cause which will take it, and he needs to notify them that this is interest money so they can utilize it in what using interest money is permissible in. Lastly, debts, and we will come to that later on, that you've borrowed £2,000 from someone. That £2,000 will not be added to your zakatable assets. So firstly, a person will calculate his zakatable assets. So let's say our individual, his zakatable assets come to £5,000. After calculating his zakatable assets, he will deduct debts and bills. This is something we need to look at and understand carefully. Debts which are due within 12 months. There are different types of debts. For example, number one, let's look at different examples. Number one, you borrow £10,000 from your brother, and your agreement is you will pay him £1,000 every 12 months. When you are calculating your zakat this time round, will you add 10,000 or 1,000? You will add £1,000. Or you will deduct £1,000. So our individual, he has 5,000 pounds of zakatable assets. He has to pay 1,000 pounds back to his brother. He will deduct 1,000 pounds and he will come with 4,000 pounds. So a debt which is due within 12 months, not the full debt, but the amount that you have agreed to pay within 12 months, that's the amount that you can deduct from your zakatable assets. That's if you have a payment plan in place. Second example, you borrow the same 1,000 pounds from your brother, but your brother says to you, pay me back whenever you want. If he has said to you, pay me back whenever you want, then that 1,000 pounds will not be deducted from your zakatable assets, because it's unclear as to when you have to pay him back. Third example, the same 1,000 pounds, your brother has said to you, I will give you 40 days notice, and then you have to repay me my 1,000 pounds. Then in that scenario, then the 1,000 pounds will be deducted or can be deducted from your zakatable assets, because the period could be within 1 year. Those are debts that we have between ourselves. Mortgage, a convention, there are two types of mortgage. One is a conventional mortgage, interest-based mortgage, which we get from the bank. It is haram. We should avoid it. We should try our best to avoid it and not get involved in it. But if we have it perchance, then what do we do? You will deduct 12 months of payments, but you cannot deduct the interest. For example, a person's mortgage payments for 1 year is £6,000. Out of that, £4,000 are payments towards the loan, towards the mortgage. £2,000 is interest. As we said, our individual, he had £5,000 of zakatable assets. He is allowed to deduct the payments towards his loan. He cannot deduct the interest. So out of the £6,000, the £4,000 that are towards his loan, he can deduct. And he will be left with £1,000. And he has to give zakat on that. He cannot deduct the £2,000 that goes towards the payment of interest. Number 5. An Islamic mortgage, Moulana Habibullah Sahib mentioned this last year as well. If a person has an Islamic mortgage which is based on diminishing musharaka, then payments cannot be deducted. Okay? If a person has an Islamic mortgage based on diminishing musharaka, that cannot be deducted. If you require, again, with all of this, if there are any questions, then please ask the muftis and please ask your local ulama and make yourself knowledgeable with regards to this. Lastly, bills which are due. You cannot deduct your bill which is due next month or your bill which is due the month after. But your bill which is overdue, you can deduct. For example, you've got a water bill that was due on the 12th of April and your zakat is due this year on the 15th. You've not paid your water bill yet, you can deduct the £30 it's due. But your bill due next month or the month after, you cannot deduct. So those are the deductibles. So you calculate, number 1, your zakatable assets. Number 2, you take out the deductibles. Then you are left with a figure. You will then compare the final amount to the nisab. What is meant by nisab? Like we have a tax threshold that when you are earning a certain amount of money, you have to pay tax. Similarly, in Islam, there is a threshold of money a person must have, of zakatable assets a person must have in order for him to pay his zakat. The amount of wealth which makes one liable for zakat is called nisab. There are 2 types of nisab. Number one is gold, and number two is silver. These are the currencies that were used at the time of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Today's figure, this figure changes daily based on the value of gold or silver on that particular day. So today's value is this. The gold value, a person must have £3,562.19. Silver, £361.29. Now question is, which one do you use? Do you use gold or do you use silver? Will your zakat be, do you have to give zakat if you have 303,562 pounds of zakatable assets or 361 pounds? Answer is here, which nisab do you use? If a person only has gold, and this is probably very rare, perhaps a lady, a woman, she only has gold jewelry, she has nothing else, then you will go by the gold nisab. But everyone else generally will have a mixture of assets. You will have cash, you will have gold, you will have silver, you will have business assets. You will go of the silver nisab, i.e., if you have in your bank account on your zakat anniversary £361.29 based on today's valuation, then you have to give zakat. The reason for taking the lower amount is, as the fuqaha mentioned in the books of fiqh, is anfa' lil fuqara, so that it is more beneficial for those who are poor. So for example, if one day the tables turned and the value of gold became less than the value of silver, then we will take the value of gold. But that is very rarely going to happen. So remember this figure. Our individual, he has £5,000 of zakatable assets. £361.29 is the nisab. Obviously, zakat is compulsory upon him. The question now is, when does he start paying? When does an individual start paying zakat? So, number one, you have to note down the Islamic date you became a nisab holder. Nisab 361. When you got 361 pounds for the first time, you will note down that date, for example, the 1st of Ramadan, 1442. Do you have to give zakat then? No. One Islamic year later, if you are still a nisab holder, if you still have the nisab on the 1st of Ramadan 1443, the nisab on that date, you will look for it and work it out. Look at wifaqululama.com, etc. Many charity websites will have the amount for you. Then you will have to give zakat in 1 year's time. So a person, he started work, never had any zakatable assets before. 1st of Ramadan, he gets paid, and it reaches the zakatable nisab amount. He will wait for 1 year, and in 1 year's time, if he still has the nisab, he will give the zakat. There is a bit more detail to that, which we will come to. That is your zakat anniversary. Now, a lot of us will not know. If you don't know your zakat anniversary, what do? You try your best to calculate it. You try your best to calculate, when was the first time do I think I became a zakat holder, a nisab holder? If you go on the National Zakat Foundation website, it has the nisab amounts for the last 50 years. Okay, it has the nisab amounts for the last 50 years. That, for example, in 1980, the nisab was £100. So that's what you need to match it with. You will not match it with to this year's. Rather, you have to think back. Now, if you can't do that as well, then a lot of people, what they do is just fix a date. That I give my zakat on the 1st of Ramadan every year. And on the 1st of Ramadan, you will work out your assets, deduct your deductibles, and then if the figure matches the nisab amount for that particular year, you will give zakat. The last point is very important. A newly baligh individual, a person who has become baligh, we give our children money. Some may have trust funds, etc. They have an account in their own name. We've been putting money in their account which is under their ownership. At the age of 15, Muhammad becomes baligh. In his account, he has £1,000. Zakat is not wajib farad on him straight away. Rather, the day he becomes baligh, 1 year after that, if he is a nisab holder, he will give zakat. Similar to a revert. Okay, David becomes Dawood, becomes a Muslim, he is a millionaire, he doesn't have to give zakat then, rather he will wait for 1 year, and in 1 year's time, 1 lunar year's time, he will assess whether he is still a nisab holder and give zakat. Remember lunar year, that is very, very important. If we give zakat on the 1st of September every year, then we will be in 10 years' time or 15 or 20 years' time missing out on years. So it is very important that we give it according to the Hijri calendar. Now, fluctuation during the year will not affect the nisab, will not affect the anniversary date. So a person's anniversary date for giving zakat is the 1st of Ramadan. 1st of Ramadan, he is a nisab holder. As we can see, the red line is nisab. The amount of money he has is above the nisab. But you can see here that a few years down the line, his assets drop beneath the red line. But a month or half a month later, he picks up again and goes back up. And at the Ramadan, in the next year, the amount of money he has is above the nisab amount. So fluctuation during the year will not change your anniversary date. His anniversary date will stay the 1st of Muharram. His anniversary date will stay the 1st of Muharram. Although you've gone beneath the nisab amount, so long as you don't hit 0, we will look at another chart on the next slide of when your anniversary date will change. But if you go beneath the nisab amount, so for example, right now it's £361. If you go to £300 and then you pick back up, and in the Ramadan next, you still have the nisab amount, you still have to give zakat on that date, fluctuation will not affect it. The key point here is, so long as your net assets, so long as net assets does not drop to 0 or below. If we look at this chart here, our individual is a nisab holder in Ramadan. But you can see the line drops to 0 a month or so after Ramadan. Now, his anniversary date will change to when he becomes a nisab holder again. So if you see further along, in Safar, the amount of money goes above the nisab amount. So then he does not have to give zakat in Ramadan. Why? Because his net assets drop to 0. Rather, he will have to give zakat in Safar the year after if it is above the nisab amount. Although here fluctuation has occurred. In Ramadan, his amount is below the nisab, but Safar and Safar, those are the 2 dates you have to look at. Safar and Safar, he is above the nisab amount. Therefore, his anniversary date has changed and he will have to give zakat in Safar of the year after. Okay, when he becomes a nisab holder again. There are a few examples here. Zayd's zakat anniversary is on the 2nd of Ramadan. On the 2nd of Ramadan this year, his assets are £1,000. His deductibles are £250. The total he has is £750. Will zakat be compulsory upon him? Show of hands, yes. Will zakat be compulsory upon him? Yes, it will be compulsory upon him, because the amount he has is above the nisab. Yes, it will be compulsory, £18. £2.75. 1/40th, 2.5%. From this we will understand whether we've been listening or not. Zaid's zakat anniversary is on the 2nd of Ramadan. On the 2nd of Ramadan this year he has £1,000 assets. His deductibles are £800. That leaves him with £200. Is zakat compulsory upon him? Yes or no? Who thinks yes? Who thinks no? No. Why? Because he has money. He's got £200, but he doesn't have the nisab. He doesn't have the £361. That's the key point to understand. It is not compulsory upon him. Time is running out very, very quickly. Recipients of zakat. We will look at the first two. Who can you give zakat to? Number one, a faqir. Allah mentions إِنَّمَا الصَّدَقَاتُ لِلْفُقَرَاءِ وَالْمَسَاكِينِ. Number one, a faqir. A faqir is someone who has nothing. He has no wealth. A faqir is a poor person who has wealth but less than the nisab. He has £200 and his excess belongings do not go above the nisab amount. So a person, all he has is £200 and his necessary belongings, you can give him zakat. Number two, a miskin, a person who has nothing at all. Very, very poor individual, obviously you can give him zakat. Moving on, this is very important again. Conditions for the validity of zakat. Intention, in order for your zakat to be valid, when giving your zakat to the charity, or when giving your zakat to the poor person, you have to have intention that you are giving them zakat. If you are giving your zakat to a poor person, you do not need to tell them verbally this is zakat. Why? This may demean them. Their morale and self-esteem may go down. Okay? You don't need to tell them, but you have to have the intention in your heart that you are giving them zakat. Or when setting it aside, a person goes to the bank, he takes out £200, sets it aside, this is zakat. Okay? If you are just walking past the charity boxes and with no intention, without setting any money aside, you just put money in any box that you think, your zakat will not be given. You have to have intention when giving or when setting the money aside. Number two, the recipient must be eligible. He cannot be a person who is giving zakat himself. Okay? Number three, the recipient must be made the owner. For example, a landlord, his tenant is eligible to receive zakat. The landlord cannot say to him, your rent for the year is £6,000. The amount of zakat I have to give is £6,000. So therefore, your rent is forgiven. Why? He has not made his tenant the owner of the £6,000. He has to give him £6,000. But even after giving him £6,000, he cannot put the condition that you have to give this money to me. That person can do whatever he wants with it because he is now the owner of it. Similarly, a charity cannot feed a village of poor people, give them a da'wat and feed them through zakat money. Rather, they have to make them owner of the money they are going to cook with or the raw materials and give that to them and make the owner of it. Make them the owner of it. It's very important to understand. When you give zakat, the money or the iftar pack or the house, if a charity builds a house from zakat money and gives it to a zakat eligible individual, they have to be made owner of that house, be given the keys, and the deeds have to be in their name. They have to be made owner of it. You cannot say to a zakat eligible individual, you can stay in this house and think that someone's zakat is going to be paid through it. You have to make them owner of it. So may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give us the ability to understand, as we hear in the Quran, فَاسْأَلُوا, zakat cannot be given. Zakat cannot be given to certain individuals. Zakat cannot be given to a non-Muslim. Zakat cannot be given to the family of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, certain members. Zakat cannot be given to your children, your descendants, your grandchildren, etc., great-grandchildren, your ascendants, your parents, your grandparents, your great-grandparents, your wife or your husband, or someone who is sahib nisab. You cannot give zakat to them. Now, time is very short. That is why these additional things which are also very important. For example, zakat on pensions. Now, many of us, we have workplace pensions. Now, on certain types of pensions, zakat is given on a certain percentage of them. On state pension and final salary pension, zakat is not given. But on other types of pensions, zakat is given. Okay? If you go on the National Zakat Foundation website, they have many educational videos and articles with regards to on which types of pension zakat is given and the percentage of the final pot of your pension pot that you have to give zakat on. Again, shares. Shares with the intention of reselling, obviously you will give zakat on the value. If you have no intention of reselling, then you will give zakat on the dividend that you receive. Again, Mufti Abdul Rahman Mughera Sahib, on his website Zamzam Academy, he has a whole playlist on his YouTube channel of important masail with regards to zakat. So again, it is very important that we make ourselves aware. As Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us, فَاسْأَلُوا أَهْلَ الذِّكْرِ إِن كُنْتُمْ لَا تَعْلَمُونَ. Ask the people of knowledge if you are unaware. Ask your ulama, ask the local scholars. If you have any questions, then everyone is open and they will willingly and more than happily answer your questions. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give us the ability to act upon what has been said. Ameen. Wa akhiru da'wana anil hamdulillahi rabbil alameen. Subhanallahi wa bihamdihi. Subhanakallahumma wa bihamdihi.